for me, that sucked, I was like, this is not okay. And I wanted to change that for people. So I could take broken people and I could get them back to the top level. I try not to have favorites, but it's very hard. I'm quite an opinionated person, as you all know now, and I'm not afraid to kind of, say when I think something's right or wrong. He wanted to be able to reduce his hours at the gym. He was working as a full-time personal trainer and hated working in the gym, hated being managed by other people. And, now we're looking at setting goals of millions of dollars a year in revenue. And it just seems crazy that was speed racing behind a boat, essentially, and made the British team when I was about 13. And part of being in the British, I used to travel all around the country and then later Europe racing, and won a few medals, championships, made the British team. And as part of the step up, you got assigned a personal trainer and a coach, and you had to go and train. And I basically spent my whole kind of young teen years and up in a weights room, in a gym. And that was life for me. I didn't know anything different. Well, all my friends were rolling out of bed at 8 o'clock to go and catch the school bus. I'd been at the gym, 3 mornings a week, already for a couple of hours. And the trainer that I had was great. Like, he just was such an inspiration that it kind of just felt normal, I guess. To me, I didn't know any different. And I was so familiar in a gym and that setting, and had been for years, that, just felt like a natural, I need to get more involved and I need to learn more. And I wanted to be able to help other people, I guess, in the way that he was able to help me. I lead the creator success team globally. So I work with all of our creators to help them grow and scale their business in a multitude of different ways. Sometimes just helping them understand their why is what they need. And sometimes it's more kind of product related. Sometimes it's just being a cheerleader on the sideline and giving them some confidence. So I guess the biggest part of what I try and do is understand what each client needs and the way I can best support them, and then offer that support.
Welcome to the show, Zoe Bond.
Thank you.
Let's take a deep dive. Who is this Bond, Zoe Bond? Let's start with the name.
Yeah.
Descendant of James Bond?
I wish so, yeah. Well, actually, funny story, my granddad is actually called James Bond, but doesn't go by James because he didn't like the association when he was growing up. So he actually uses his middle name, but his name on paper is James Bond.
I love it. Too funny. You have 3 amazing, incredible children, and just tell us a little bit about them. And I know that's your why.
Yeah, so I've got Scarlett, who's just turned 12, Sienna, who's now 10, and Ave, my youngest, is nearly 6. They are, absolute bundles of energy, but they are absolutely my why. They everything I do is about them and leading by example and just giving them the best life that I can, and being the best role model for them, I guess.
What do you do at MacroActive?
I lead the creator success team globally. So I work with all of our creators to help them grow and scale their business in a multitude of different ways. Sometimes just helping them understand their why is what they need. And sometimes it's more kind of product related. Sometimes it's just being a cheerleader on the sideline and giving them some confidence. So I guess the biggest part of what I try and do is understand what each client needs and the way I can best support them, and then offer that support.
And it ranges, I'm sure, quite radically from one to the other.
Absolutely. And sometimes even clients change the support they need. When they first start working with us, they might need one type of support, and then as they grow, that support changes throughout their journey.
Where and how did you get started in this industry?
So I used to do a professional sport when I was very young. So I started a sport called water ski racing, which is not very well known. It's not one of your mainstream football or rugby or it was kind of a family sport. My dad did it, my uncle did it, and then I've only got a sister, so I was kind of the tomboy of the family and got brought into this sport by my dad. I was a teenager in a high level sport where all my friends were going to parties and, you know, had older brothers that were buying them alcohol and just all of those natural things. And he was just really good at keeping me focused and just really getting in my head and making me see kind of what I wanted and the importance of, you know, making the right decisions, I guess. And I trusted him, and that, you know, that meant a lot going through all of that. He really helped keep me on track. And yeah, I mean, he helped me find balance so that I could keep doing what I was doing at a high level while still kind of enjoying some aspects of kind of life in the last years of school and things. So yeah, I just had so much respect for him. And he'd always led by example. You know, he'd come through our sport and excelled when he was younger. He was quite a bit older by the time. I mean, I would have been. I started working with him from about 11 years up, and he would have been probably in his 50s at that point. So he'd kind of excelled and had his career. And yeah, it just felt like a natural progression. I kind of hadn't really thought about anything else. Just, this is what I do. This is what I know. This is where I feel comfortable.
Mindset more than anything.
Yeah. And then how can I explore this further? You know, how can I see where this will take me and different aspects of it? So yeah, I had an injury when I was about 17. I came off in quite a big race at high speed and had quite a big injury, which meant I was out for a long time. And it was, for me, the whole kind of physio and rehab aspect then came into it later, because I had gone from being, you know, one of the top in my sport for my country. I was only 17, got injured, but you just kind of shown the door immediately. Not, it's better now, but back then it was kind of like, we don't want to spend the time rehabbing you. Yeah, next one in. And I just, for me, that sucked, you know. I was like, this is not okay, and I wanted to change that for people. So then that's kind of where the high level sport rehab kind of came into it. I wanted to prove, I guess, to myself and to the world that I could take broken people and I could get them back to the top level, like, you know, like I would have been.
And you've worked with major athletes, certainly in this part of the world, but global. Expand on that a little bit. If not broken, certainly wounded athletes return to the field and excel.
I've always loved rugby. That's just always been, I've always wanted to be able to follow a sport that I kind of wasn't involved in. It's nice to watch something when you know nothing about it as such. And I got into rugby through that. My cousin played at a semi-professional level, so I used to enjoy going to watch him. And just ended up finding through my physio degree, you had to go and do like a placement where you would get your experience. And I got offered a place within a rugby club, and perfect, you know, let's go and try it out. So did that and really enjoyed it. And that kind of opened up that other avenue of, okay, this is interesting. And I'm a learner. Like, I like to, if I don't understand something, I want to understand it, and I want to know the ins and outs and how it works and why it works or why it doesn't. So I went and learned the ins and outs. It went from being sitting on a rugby sideline, not knowing what was going on really, to knowing everything about the game, so that I could help my players in the best way that I could. Because if I understood the positions that they played, I would understand the demands on their body, and therefore I could give them the best possible rehab. So that's kind of where it all developed. And then I guess just through that and my passion, just different opportunities came about. I moved to New Zealand actually with a completely different job, but we're coming with that little bit of a rugby edge just certainly helps you out when you're in New Zealand. So
yeah. And before arriving in New Zealand, getting into rugby, you worked as a PT all over England, Europe.
So personal training and teaching group fitness. So working for the English franchise of Les Mills, which is called FitPro in the UK. So I worked for them teaching, I think it was about 5 Les Mills classes I got qualified in teaching in the end, but presenting and then personal training in different gyms. So moved around the country, a little bit of time in Leeds, London, southwest of England where I'm from. And yeah, the Les Mills position is what kind of brought me initially over to New Zealand.
And then we crossed paths.
Yes.
so lucky to have crossed paths. Could you describe MacroActive in a few sentences?
MacroActive builds or provides an automized solution for trainers, creators to be able to help more people, ultimately, to be able to free up their time, make some of those day-to-day coaching and delivery automated so that you can scale your impact, deliver to more people.
Interesting. And your experience working with these coaches and athletes and creators, who's a favorite and why? What makes a favorite creator to work with?
I try not to have favorites, but it's very hard. I've got a few favorites really for different reasons. Some because of, I guess, connection or respect for what they do. And then some because I guess I'm proud of what I've achieved with them. You know, I have a close connection, like friendship, really. It becomes more than just work. And, you know, they become more than just clients for some of them. So I guess they would be favorites. But yeah, different reasons. I mean, favorites because, as I said, they're out there doing something different. They're willing to work hard, take risks, kind of innovate and push boundaries. I really like that. I think, you know, a lot of where we achieve success is when people are willing to take those risks and try new things. And, you know, one of the things I always say to my clients is we're not going to get it right every single time, but it's the 1 out of 3 that we get right, that we learn from and we replicate. And that's where you really get the growth. And it's quite rare to come across somebody who will give you that trust and allow you to kind of almost go on the journey with them and experiment and find these things. So when I do find somebody that I feel like I can connect with and get on the same page with, that we're willing to kind of take that journey together, I think that's where the magic happens, and those kind of become your favorites to work with when you feel like it's reciprocal. You know, I can be quite pushy. I always say to my clients, it's a bit of a love-hate relationship. If you tell me you want to do something, we'll do it, but don't get annoyed with me along the way, because I am going to nag at you and I am going to make sure that if we've set a target, we're going to get there. They don't all stick along for the ride. Some of them will kind of tap out halfway through and go, too much.
What would be a lesson you've learned the hard way along this road?
There's been a few times where I would say I've probably invested too much into a client. You know, I feel like sometimes I can see opportunities within their business, and learning that there's a right time to roll with those. And just, you know, I've had experiences where I've seen an opportunity and I've maybe gone ahead and, you know, created a product, drafted something, come up with this big strategy, and then actually the creator's not been on board with it, and you end up using a lot of time of wasted effort. So making sure that, you know, communication is there right the way through. So before we are making any big investments, kind of time and effort wise, that it is going to be well received on the other side.
Yeah, definitely. And along the way, did you have a mentor? Did you receive advice in your career that has helped guide you in decisions that you've made, similar to, I suppose, the advice that you're giving your coaches and creators?
Yeah. So Emma Barry, Susan Renata at Les Mills were my absolute idols. So coming up through Les Mills, moved from obviously the UK franchise where it's a really close-knit team. Everyone kind of knows everyone and supports each other. When I moved over here, it was just completely different. And yeah, I remember Norm Phillips was the PT manager at Les Mills in the city at the time, and just leaned on a few of those really kind of big Les Mills figures at the time. And but yeah, Emma and Susan were always fierce women, I guess. You know, I really respected the fact that they were females in a male-dominated industry, and they weren't afraid to just be who they were, and they weren't afraid to kind of step over lines. And I guess I've always been a little bit like that. I'm not intimidated in a room full of men. I don't feel like I shouldn't, you know, have a voice. That probably comes from kind of 8 years under their wing.
That support is so important. You've touched on it a little bit, but how else do you help those that you work with feel supported?
Again, lots of different aspects. So when I first meet with a client, I try to get a real understanding of not just their business, but more about where they've come from, where they want to go. As much information as I can get from them in those first initial meetings gives me a better kind of platform to support them from. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as, I say as simple, but sometimes it's kind of outside the box, and it's, you know, actually my wife doesn't like me posting on social media so much, or she won't let me be in my DMs. Right, get me on a call with your wife, let's have a chat. And so sometimes it's those external things that people would go, well, that's not part of your job, but actually that is a roadblock to them succeeding. So whatever we need to remove. So yeah, sometimes talking to wives, partners, girlfriends, husbands, whatever, to try and get them on board. Yeah, I mean, down to anything, down to guidance, so in terms of business, product, niche, all of the standard, I guess. But I guess those outside of the box things that a lot of people probably overlook.
You mentioned earlier when you're working with people that sometimes their priorities have changed or their programs have changed. Can you expand on an example of one where they pivoted or they did something completely different that had a profound impact on their output?
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, I've probably got to talk about, I don't know if we're allowed to say, are we allowed to say names? Are we going to beep them out?
We'll just beep them out.
I've probably got to talk about he's probably the biggest success story of that. I mean, positive and negatives, I guess, from that same scenario. I've got another example where a creator kind of took our guidance, earned a lot of money, then decided to do things her own way, is now going backwards. So it does happen both ways. But yeah, be the biggest success story of that, you know, coming in with his own business ideas, male personal trainer, very much the cliche, six-pack, lots of time with his shirt off. I train men and women and everyone, and I can help you build muscle, lose weight, do everything under the sun. And it never really took off. I mean, earning, you know, $2,500 to $3,000 a month, but really having to work for that, and then making that decision of, we really need to niche this down. You know, we really need to find your why and what you enjoy. And again, questioning around, what do you love about your job? What do you know, which clients do you work with in a gym? If you've got a gym full of leads and you can only take 2 new clients, who are the 2 that you're accepting? And it became really clear that he loved working with females. He'd helped his wife have a partner at the time. They weren't married, a big transformation. And he really kind of got enjoyment out of helping women overcome this stigma of eating less and doing loads of cardio. And he'd had some clients in the gym recently that had some really good results that gave us a really solid foundation. We've got some great testimonials. You're obviously quite passionate about it. Let's kind of explore that. And that's where, yeah, the new brand was born, and we really niched down. And
so rebranded. I mean,
complete
right
rebrand.
Everything. Logo, name.
Name, colors, everything.
Yeah, wow. Yep.
Completely restarted. Yeah, and I remember I actually had a phone call with him about 2 weeks ago, and he had some new staff, and the new staff were saying, how did you guys meet? And kind of asking him and we were just kind of reminiscing, talking like this, and I was saying, do you remember back, you know, when we first set goals, that first goal setting session? And the first goals we set were, he wanted to be able to reduce his hours at the gym. He was working as a full-time personal trainer and hated working in the gym, hated being managed by other people. So that was the first goal. Then second goal was to earn enough money that his wife could give up work. She was working as like an eyelash beautician, wanted to get out of her job. And you know, now we're looking at setting goals of millions of dollars a year in revenue, and it just seems crazy that was 2 years ago. And we were, you know, he cut down his hours, he left his job, his wife left her job, she's now a full-time employee of the business. 2 other staff been brought on board, just bought a gym that's, you know, going to open and launch soon, podcast studio. Yeah, pretty crazy to think in 2 years where it's come from.
Rebranding, starting over is not always the right thing to do, but in this case, it clearly was.
Yep.
What's an example where you've had someone who wanted to rebrand, but you knew that for whatever reason that wasn't the answer, and was there an outcome that led to success or not, or do you have examples in that vein as well?
Yeah, so a lot of creators think that rebranding is the answer. Perhaps when sales are not performing, it's quite an easy thing to say, I'm not making enough money, it must be the brand. What we try and do is give them an honest opinion of, is your organic on point? Are we promoting? Is the offer right? Is the price right? And, only once we've kind of gone through that process of elimination, if we can say that everything else is right and yes, it's not performing, then perhaps it is the brand. But 90% of the time it's something else, and kind of rebrand is the kind of easiest option. We get people saying weekly, I'm going to rebrand. Why? Well, I've only had X amount of sales this week. Well, how many times have you promoted? Oh, twice. Well, let's start there. It is really common. It happens I'm just about to do a rebrand with somebody now who signed up, and when he signed up, I had a really clear picture in my mind of how we could make this guy really successful and what that kind of looked like. And when he signed up, he kind of did a full 180 on that and was like, no, I don't want to go with your ideas. I've got my own ideas, and worked with onboarding, built this whole brand out, sales page branding, everything went live. Very reluctant to kind of buy into our ideas and suggestions, and it hasn't performed. And we've tried really hard. I've tried really hard. I've tried to support him knowing that was what he wanted, but it's just not the right brand for him. And we actually had a phone call last week where he was like, okay, hands up, I get it, like we're going to redo it. So we're actually going through a rebrand now, which I'm really confident will be a really successful one again. Just really leaning into who this person kind of should be and their audience. And
do you get this hands-on with every client, or just the big clients? And what's the process of working with MacroActive when someone signs up?
So when somebody signs up, they come through to the team, and everyone gets this kind of hands-on experience until they prove that they either kind of don't want it, they're not making the most of it. Everyone will get this level of advice and support, but often, people like this example, I don't want to take your ideas, I've got my own, I don't want to listen, not open to any suggestion. And, we have to learn when to step away and, be there when they're ready to come back, and knowing that a lot of time they do come back. There's some now where I kind of, it sounds a little bit cocky, but I kind of go, oh yeah, I'll hear from you in 6 months. And most of the time you do, that they're going to go off and try these things and come back. So everyone gets that opportunity. And if it's working well and then you'll stay with the team and get that support throughout.
There's the VIP experience that MacroActive offers when signing up for new coaches and creators to fly down to New Zealand and go through the process, meet the whole team, and so on and so forth. Do they legitimately get more hands-on than anyone else would? Like, maybe expand on that truly they get time with you while they're here?
Yep, they do. And in person, I think it's always, you can gain so much more when you stood in the kitchen making a coffee with somebody. Like I said, for me to do my job at my best, it's really important to kind of know all of the extra stuff. Everyone jumps on a call knowing or they're knowing that they're going to be asked about their brand and their customers and their why and what their goals are in terms of business. But it's when you can really connect and understand someone's kind of personality and what makes them tick and see where those potential weaknesses are that you can then offer the best support. And I think you can't get that at the same level in a call as you can here in person. Like I said, standing in the kitchen making a coffee, having a chat before our kind of one-on-one sessions is probably where I get the most value. And of course we do, we have calls with creators otherwise, but you just can't replicate that in person.
It's a big investment to join MacroActive, quite intentional actually, so that people come into this as if it's a business. Well, it is a business, but we want to make sure that they're treating it as a business. But still, there's a nervousness of making such a large commitment. What would you say to someone feeling apprehensive about making this sort of sizable investment?
I think with anything, you're always going to get out of something what you put in. And if you're going to, if you're willing to, again, we touched on it before about, taking risks, calculated risks. And this is one in a business. You make that investment, what you're putting in, you're going to get out, you're going to learn directly from the team, you're going to have connection with everyone here, much more hands-on involvement with your brand. I mean, you're sat there whilst it's being built. It's that real-time feedback. We want to make sure that when everyone leaves here, they absolutely love their product. And as much as, again, we try with that, when it's over phone and email, so much can be lost in translation. Whereas to really see how somebody feels when they're sat next to you, you've got it right. And you can also see when you haven't got it right, but we've got time while they're here to rectify that and make sure that it is right. So I think a lot more guided coaching, just so much more valuable experience, I think, to be here and learn directly from the team. And ask questions. I think when you're here, you get that opportunity. Ask questions. Like I said, going back to that example of making a coffee in the kitchen, use those times. Come down, pick our brains, quiz us, question us. You're going to have lots more opportunity to kind of make the most of the team's knowledge and experience.
I've seen that old fear of failure creep in. And I think in person gives us the ability to clock it and catch it.
Absolutely.
And have you seen that? And maybe expand on an example that you've witnessed, or even if it's just on telecalls or whatever.
Yeah. So we've actually got an example I was talking about with the team this morning. We've got a creator who has a huge platform and huge potential, but has this kind of persona, if you like, that he's built up on his social media. And he's about to launch his product. He's got a great product. He's put a lot of time and investment into launching it, but he will not promote on his main social media platforms because he's so worried about what people are going to think, because this other persona that he has. And that fear of being judged and that fear of failure, if you like, on this main platform is actually going to end up costing him thousands of dollars in clients, because he has this great platform where he has this audience primed and ready to go. So literally just this morning we were talking about different strategies and ways that we could kind of slowly coach him through little kind of ways, I guess, to build his trust and get him to experiment with little things to show him that is the right thing to do. But yeah, I mean, it holds people back a lot.
Now, to be as transparent as possible, can you give us a story or example of when we've completely fucked up and the company could have done a better job, and what we did to rectify it?
I think there's definitely examples where perhaps we weren't so confident or assertive as we needed to be with certain clients. I think we've probably let a few clients down by just following their lead. Sometimes clients come in and they don't really have any idea, and if we're not giving them kind of confident, assertive ideas, it ends up just we build something that is built on I think or maybe, and we've had a lot of clients who've gone live with the wrong product. They should have had a different product, they should have had a different offering, price point, whatever that might be. I think we've learned a lot from that, and we now are getting a lot better through, not right from the beginning, actually, from the sales team through onboarding and obviously into creator success, where we're now not afraid to say to somebody, that is not the right direction for you, and that is not what you should be going live with. And, you know, we've turned it around for some of those clients by going back to them and saying, look, we actually don't think you've got the right product or the right offering, and let's get you back in and reinvent the wheel. And whether that's been, you know, changing the price point, the product, the value within it. And we have turned some of those around, and we do now have them out there with the product that they should have. So yeah, I mean, like I said, we're never going to get it right 100% of the time, but as long as when you do, you learn from either one. You know, when you get it right, you need to learn from that, but equally when you get it wrong, you need to learn from that. And, you know, that's something that we're really good at, is saying that we haven't got this right, but we're going to change it and we're going to get better and make sure we get it right moving forward.
That's great. That's great. So many people come to us and want or think that advertising is the answer, or running ads, or maybe they don't want to post organically. They're shy of posting organically, or they're tired of it, or they want to hand the keys over to somebody else to run it. If I could just find somebody to run ads for me, this would all be so much easier. What's your advice to that category of creator?
I mean, ads is always, as I tell everyone, ads is always the cherry on top. And if you've got no cake, there's no point in putting a cherry on top. You've got to do the hard work. And again, it comes down to those initial conversations, which, you know, I'm probably more blunt than anyone else on my team having those, I think, from, you know, just years of experience. But you know, what do you want to get out of this? What are you willing to put in? And that's probably the most important question. And when you do come across those creators that maybe on paper look fantastic, they've got a huge following, and you know, they are experienced in what they've done, or they've had a history, you know, in a certain niche, but you get on those initial calls and they say, well, I'm just going to flick some ads on, and I'm not actually going to talk about this product. You know, for me, that's red flags. It kind of erases everything else that looks good on paper. And that's where you start to have questions around, or I have conversations around, okay, we need to set some realistic goals. You know, how much money do you want to make? Oh, well, I've got 2 million followers, so I mean, I should be able to sell to 50% of them and have 1 million clients. But you're not going to post. No, okay. And we start to kind of work backwards with the reality of, if you're going to post only X amount, what do the conversions look like on that? And then you start to give them the dollar figures, and then they go, oh, okay. And that's kind of what makes or breaks it. You know, if, okay, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and I'll change my kind of attitude on that, or it's not going to go anywhere, unfortunately. And they're normally the ones that will go off and do it their way and come back 6 months later and go, right, okay, let's have another conversation.
You talked about pricing and offers earlier, and we see in the market so many high-ticket type of pricing offers with lots of one-on-one, and then equally, and what we see a lot of with MacroActive, obviously because of the automation behind it, lower priced offers. Can they work hand in hand? Why should one do a high ticket versus a low ticket? And why would you not want to do one or the other, or both?
Yeah, so the initial kind of things that we go through are like audience size, location, and authority. Really is if you've got a lot of authority, you don't have to do high ticket. High ticket is always a great option for everyone, but there are some creators who just don't want to do that. I don't want to jump on a call. I don't want to invest, you know, hours every day, week, month. It's not for everyone, but it's, you know, it's never an option that should be written off. But for creators that maybe don't have a lot of authority, so they're not very well known, or they haven't positioned themselves as a fitness coach before, high ticket is absolutely where they should start, because you are closer to the front line. It's where you're going to get your name out there. You're going to build that relationship with your clients. You're going to get testimonials. You're going to get before and afters. and you can really control the outcome of a smaller amount of clients. And then from that gives you the authority to start being able to offer a low ticket option. If you come in with no authority and no audience and just throw a fitness product out there, nobody's going to buy it. So you have to claim that authority. So when a client comes through, we look at all of those things: age, demographic, niche, do they have authority? What is their following size? And if it's not through social media, do they have any other marketing platforms? And that's where we'll, suggest what we feel is the best option for them. And sometimes it's a bit of a roadmap. High ticket is the best place for you to start right now, but this might be a 6 to 12 month term that you have to go through to build this authority, get some kind of status and before and afters, all that social proof built up. Then we start to layer in that kind of low ticket offer. Some of the other way around, they come in primed for a low ticket. And, we have some creators who say, this is great, but I actually miss some of the hands-on. I miss being able to chat with some of my clients like I used to in the gym. And that's where the high ticket is great. You can say, all right, what's your schedule like? What's, how realistically, how much time can you invest? And then we put a price tag based on whether they're going to do, one-on-one group coaching. And
what would you say to those who think that they may be cannibalizing one offer versus the other offer?
Your offers aren't right. If you think you're cannibalizing, your offers should be different. Every decision that a buyer makes should be black and white. You either need accountability, support, and you're going to pay that higher price tag because those are the aspects that you really need, or you're looking for a low ticket option where you're self-sustained with a program. But as long as the offers are different, it's a black and white decision between both, and everyone will make that decision based on your offer. So if you're worried and people aren't being able to decide, it means your offers aren't right.
And the coach who has run out of hours in a day because they've built a successful high ticket offer, they're doing very well. They have dozens, if not borderline into the small hundreds of clients. They have, in many cases, recruited friends to help them do the coaching, and they've got a real business, but their close rate, albeit 30-40%, is still denying access to more than half of the people who muster up the courage to reach out and ask for help and inquire, but are told they can't afford it. What's your strategy to that type of scenario?
So, obviously downsell. So when I talk to my clients about this, we talk about an ecosystem and kind of building an ecosystem in their business. So most people, 30-40%, some 60% close on high ticket, still 40% chunk of their leads there that aren't closing. So normally the first question is, what do you do with those at the moment? And the answer normally is nothing. So that's an easy option. They can't afford it. They're not ready to commit. You downsell them into your low ticket offer. Your low ticket offer then becomes like a tripwire offer for your high ticket. Getting somebody who has just built up the courage to click on a form on your Instagram likely is not going to spend $2,000 straight off the bat. It's a big commitment for people to make. Your conversions are always going to be much higher if you've sold somebody on a $30 product and they've spent once, they've already bought into your brand, the conversions now will be higher going into that high ticket. So I always try and talk about it being an ecosystem of, people will come into low ticket and then you can market into your high ticket, and people who don't close into your high ticket or finish your high ticket, because high ticket has a lifetime. Nobody signs up for one-on-one coaching with that being their end goal for the next 3 years. It's 10, 12 weeks, 6 months maximum if somebody's got a wedding, a holiday. Where do they go after that? What are you going to lose them, or is it better to have them in your ecosystem? Because if they're still in your ecosystem, when the next wedding, child, honeymoon comes up, they're going to come back to you. So, ecosystem is kind of the word I use, and just getting people sometimes to understand that you don't have to have a sales page out there and be promoting a low ticket offer on your Instagram. If you want to promote just your high ticket and you have a hidden sales page where, even something as simple today as I've created a Google document with some links and everything on that's going to somebody's closers, that it's not published, nobody would ever find it, but when they can't close that deal on high ticket, they've got a link. Hey, I'm going to send you this link right now in the chat. Click. It's only $29. So there's still lots of options to layer it in. It doesn't have to be the same package or offer for everyone that comes through.
And as the coaches and creators sustainably scale their business, how do you help them maintain a sense of authenticity and transparency and connection with their audiences and clients as they scale?
Again, I guess it would depend on every client and what they're willing to put into it. I think, community's retention glue is how I tell it to my clients. So the more time I give them, it's kind of like we're going to give you this amount of time back, but you've actually got to give this amount back to me by committing to doing X, Y, and Z. So whether that be having, being in the community themselves, having a community manager, but then them showing up, so that there's still that kind of nurturing, whether it's still being active in their DMs. If a client is just really happy being in their DMs, be active in your DMs so you're still connected. Whether it's jumping on a monthly call, whether it's just showing up every now and then with a unique video, whatever that might be, but making sure that there is still that connection. And in actual fact, most of them, it's revisiting why you got into this. Why did you get into this? When you get really big, I guess it's easy for them to get, it does become just a business, but making sure throughout that they always stay connected to the why. And, you got into this because you wanted to help people. You liked training people in the gym. You wanted to hear their success stories. And I try and nurture that a little bit by making sure that I send, bits of feedback to them just to drop, isn't it great to hear this feedback? Or you must love seeing this in your community. And then they're going to go and have a look, and it kind of naturally then inspires them to get back in. But I think that's really important, is just us keeping them grounded.
What's been one of the most difficult challenges you've faced while working at MacroActive, and what did you learn from it?
Difficult challenges. Like personally or with clients?
Yeah, both, either.
I guess personally, I'm quite an opinionated person, as you all know now, and I'm not afraid to kind of, say when I think something's right or wrong. But again, you've got to, when you first come into a company, you can't just come in and go, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's. So I think for me, kind of biding my time, I used to look at, different aspects of, I guess, particularly creator success, because that was, that's always been my passion, is like helping people grow their business. And I used to sit and kind of look and, bite my tongue and go home from work feeling really frustrated, saying, God, I wish I could just tell them. But I didn't feel like it was the time or the place, or I had enough kind of, authority in the company to say anything. And that was really hard for me, because you naturally, I want to help and I want to make things right, and I want to kind of share but you can't always do that. So that was personally for me something I had to learn, just to kind of get my head down and do the work and almost show, rather than coming in and just going, we should be doing this, just waiting for my opportunity to kind of do it and show it. And get my kind of voice in that way, I guess. There's
no shortage of we should do this, we should do that now. What was the turning point?
I think I did enough to kind of prove that I wasn't just making stuff up as I went along. And then I was like, okay, now I'm just, I love it. Now I'm not afraid to say.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. And now, we should do this, we should do that, is all we hear over and over and over again with respect to feature A versus feature B versus feature C.
Yeah. So in terms of feature requests, I'm quite lucky that I've got my kind of ear to the ground across not only my client load, but, you know, me and my team meet every day, and every week we have a really thorough meeting where we'll talk about, you know, what's working, what's not, what are our clients happy with, what are they not so happy with, or what are some potential kind of roadblocks for different reasons. And therefore I feel like I've always kind of got my ear to the ground. So when something comes in, you know, I may be aware that it's also been mentioned 4 other times before. So it might have kind of small warrant on its own, but suddenly now, because I've heard it talk about in a lot of different scenarios, I can kind of go, actually, look, we need to look at this one and give it that little bit of different perspective. Sometimes as well, you can look at an idea that one client brings in, or I feel like a client will come in with an idea and they're suggesting it in one kind of capacity, but I'm going, well, yeah, if we did that, that would also solve this and this, because it would also, and it's something that I can see will offer value across a lot of different kind of areas, or maybe solve other problems. It's just that they've kind of portrayed their idea differently. So obviously that helps me prioritize that. Being quite involved with the platform, I guess my role has evolved, that I do a bit of everything. With my top clients, I'm support, I'm customer support, I'm everything for their business. So I'm in the back end making programs, tweaking programs, uploading videos, creating app pages, as much as I'm advising them on their social media, like building a sales page. And when you're that hands-on, you start to experience those day-to-day, hey, that took me a lot longer than it should have. So if it's taking me a long time and I work with the platform day in and day out, this is probably something we need to look at. So yeah, a lot of the kind of improvements just come from things that I'm doing, and the pain points that I see and feel. And I know if I can make it better for me, I'm making it better for everyone that's interacting with the platform.
Would you say it's safe to say that those who've learned how to use the platform are more successful than others?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think when you know how to use the platform, you know how to build the best products, one of the biggest things in building and growing is being able to pivot and change quickly. And if you don't know how your product works, A, you can't market it, but B, you can't be responsive. If you've got to wait for somebody else to guide you on every aspect and then build it for you and deliver it back to you, you're never going to sell something as well as something you've built yourself. You understand the ins and outs of it. You're not going to be afraid to show up on your social media or in your community, because you know how to answer people's questions. That's most of the time when people don't show up on their social media, don't show up on their community, don't go live and promote their product. It's because they're scared to answer questions. Hey, what if they ask me something about the app and I can't answer it? Like, how embarrassing would that be? So learn your product is, where we kind of push home. If you know your product, you can adapt, you can get the most out of it. So many of our creators probably only using 40% capacity of the product that they've got because they don't know how to kind of get the most out of different things.
How do they get the most out of it?
I think taking the time, use your own product, get in, play around with it, ask questions, use that time with your creator success manager, use that time in onboarding that you have. Everyone comes through and has a soft launch call where they'll get a demo of the software. Not very many people ask questions. Question everything. That call is recorded. That's going to be your learning to go back to, question everything, get shown everything. If you know where the boundaries are, then you know how creative you can get with it.
What excites you most about the future of this industry and MacroActive's clients?
I think most excited to just continue to be able to, develop a better product to help more coaches. I think we're in a really exciting spot where our product is evolving, and we're at a really key time now, I think, where we've got more features and more happening within our product, which is really client-centric, which obviously I love, coming from the creator success side of things, being able to kind of fill that gap almost between being frontline and really understanding what our clients want and need, and then being able to kind of almost be involved in that product side as well, where I can make sure that we are on the same page.
If you could leave those creators that you've worked with to date with one message, what would it be?
It would be, don't be afraid to take risks. Take risks, try, and pivot where you need to. Just always have, it's never about plan A. For me, it's always about, you've got to have plan A, B, and C. And, don't be afraid to take that risk and know that you've got plan B to go to. The most successful clients are the ones that try and they take risks and they learn from it, good or bad, and then they move on. The clients who are out there struggling or not achieving the goals that they want to achieve are the clients who are giving up at the first hurdle. I've tried it once, it didn't work. Nothing ever works on the first try.
And for those athletes, coaches, and creators you're yet to work with?
I mean, the first thing when I came across MacroActive, I said was, man, I wish I'd had a platform like this when I was personal training. Where was it then? It would absolutely be game changing to anyone's business. You can train 30 to 50 clients a week and be absolutely maxed out depending on what you put into, writing their products and their programs. And most people who get into this, they want to help people, and your reach is only as far as those 30 to 50. This platform allows you to help, millions, more than that, make a good amount of money on the road as well. But just unlimited possibilities with what you can do, taking your product global. You see some of our creators now, the amount they travel and the opportunities that it opens up. I think anyone who's ready to kind of change their in-person business should take the risk, come and give it a go. There are opportunities there.
Love it.